Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to the Master series. This is the episode number 83 in which I will cover a new tournament I've played in January, which is the Prague Open. Right after the Cracovia festival in Krakow, Poland, I went to Prague, Czech Republic in order to compete, in order to still fight for the FIDE Master title. Let's see how it started. One difference between the Krakow tournament and the Prague tournament was that in the Krakow there was a floor of rating, meaning that no players under 2100 rating could have participated. In Prague there was no such floor, therefore anyone could have joined, and it meant that especially in the first rounds of the tournament I would be playing against much lower rated opponents. This is something I knew from the beginning, it's not like it was a surprise, but I still went for it. I decided, okay, let's play against them to try to win the games. In the first round I got paired with the young guy from Czech Republic rated 1900, but with the black pieces, so with that you never know. After e4 that he chose, I replied with e5, trying to go not into some sharp Sicilians, but rather something calm and compact, let's say, to try to outplay the opponent in the middle game. After knight f3, knight c6, c3 happened. Ponziani opening. If I am correct, Gotham Chess is advising this opening in his, let's say, speedruns and whatnot. And I didn't know how young my opponent is, in a sense that does he follow a lot of, modern YouTube or whatever. So I was not sure, is it just a funny trap that he wants to play against me, or is it like a big opening that he prepared? Therefore, instead of going for d5 line, which is the most direct one, but maybe opponent would have had some ideas to let's say equal the game thanks to some strange lines, I decided against it. I wanted to play calmer version and I chose d6. After d6 I am basically saying I don't want any advantage. Moreover, I don't want to even equalize the game. I just want to play more compact, more passive position, worse one, but without any kind of the surprise coming at me, right? So kind of an okay approach, but I had to be prepared for a long fight, but I was. So let's continue. d4 happened, obvious way of playing. Knight f6, my opponent did not even cover the pawn, he played a3. There is some trick that after knight e4, d5 I am hit there, and once the knight moves, queen a4 would hit the knight and the king, and even if not for the trick, usually I would be against taking this pawn when having so little space and no castle. So I just continued normally, bishop e7, bishop d3 he played, castle, and already as of now he chose to push d5. This was expected, was something I wanted, to be honest. I was provoking him to play the move, but it's obviously the best one. If he would not do it and let's say castle, now I would be debating between taking or not. Since he pushed anyway, I did not have such a debate coming into my mind. I just went back to b8, very useful move to know. It's not that bad to play those two moves with the knight, because even though we are two tempos down, what we achieved is that this pawn is a little bit overextended, allowing our knight to have the reroute back to c5 maybe. He continued c4, knight d7, knight c3, and I decided to strike immediately in the center, fight for any kind of, let's say, space, and chose c6, usual stuff, not only trying to ask the pawn what does he want to do, but also creating the square for the queen. So bishop e3, queen c7 it is. Rook c1, usual stuff. Rook e8, usual stuff. I want to give the f8 square for either of my light pieces. Castle. Now I have decided that I want to jump to f8. I talked to you guys about c5 square, so the alternative variation would be to play a5, trying to stop b4. Once that stopped, then indeed knight c5 might be a possibility. At the same time, I was not sure if I want to allow the exchange, because even though it would not be objectively the best, I guess, for white, practically it would make matters harder for me in terms of winning the game, because not only do I know that I am worse in here, I also know that I want to win for 100%. Therefore, sometimes, even though I might have something to equalize. I want to do it on my own terms without oversimplifying things or over blockading things, right? So I hope you know what I mean. In here, any other move but this one would guarantee white some advantage. This move would make the position equal, but not so easy for me to win. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I chose completely different route. I chose knight f8 with the idea of jumping to g6, and after rook f2 d1, knight h5. So usual stuff. This knight is coming quite a long maneuver to help that knight to jump to f4 or jump to f4 itself. In here I was kind of bluffing the opponent, but I cannot even explain to you guys the bluff itself because it makes no sense. The point is that in general, once this rook has moved, everything is like prepared for white. So his obvious choice, obvious plan idea would be to push b4 and try to create something on the king side. Therefore, I should start with a5 or maybe even c5 move. But I decided to go knight h5, allow this move, but as I've said, I don't know even why, because after b4, if you think about it, if I jump to f4, now the bishop drops, and what did I achieve by playing firstly this and allowing that? I'm not sure, because I could have had basically the same stuff if after if rook f2 d1 I would play a5 and only then go there and there. But whatever, thankfully after knight h5 my opponent indeed played bishop f1, so trying to be prophylactic and so on, but it allowed me to be on time with the c5 move, stopping b4. So since my knights are far away from the c5 square, I am happy to just close it down to gain some control over the dark squares. The general idea of it too is that I wanted to close down the initiative of the opponent on the queen side so that mine on the other side would be maybe more beneficial. b4 is not that easy to obtain in here, even though tactically speaking my opponent could have played b4, because if I take knight b5 hitting there and there, b5 is semi-open, I would not be taking, so apparently a3 was not that needed, to be honest. But he played it anyway. I chose a simple bishop d7 developing move, b4, b6, solidifying the position there. Now my opponent went for knight e2, trying to cover the f4 square, and in here I had the choice of what to do. Should I go for some pure and full kingside, not really attack, but rather initiative and ideas, right? But I have some difficulties mostly connected to the fact that after f5 of any kind, if takes, there is the g4 with the fork. So I struggle a little bit with how to continue there. On top of that, my opponent still has some choices to make on the queen side. He can push, he can take, he can leave it as it is. So since I was unable to tell what exactly should I do on the king side, I wanted to resolve the situation on the queen side first. So even though there is this saying that you don't want to, you should not make moves on the side that opponent is, let's say, having the pressure, I chose a5 just to, as I've said, confirm what's going on there. In my mind, I had the idea that if b5 would have happened, I might make a maneuver similar to the f6, king f7, rook h8, rook g8 or something like it, and then king e8, d8, c8, b7, trying to make my king escape so far away and then launch some kingside initiative. But my opponent I took back, therefore the b file is opened, but I thought that there are no easy entry squares for the rooks, for the queens or anything, so I was okay. What I was not okay with was the fact that my opponent, if he would like to, he could have kind of killed my initiative on the king side with the g4 move, which is not exactly the move that you really want to make, I mean pushing the pawn in front of the king. However, it would make my knight f4 jump basically not working, because it's forcing me to do it while I have not enough, let's say, defenders. So after takes, I am pawn down. I have the bishop on the dark squares and the pawns, so I might have some counterplay on the dark squares, but I felt it's not enough and I would not risk it like that. So I would have to go back to f6, and after knight g3 covering the pawn, my knights are not there. His knight might be there. I don't have h5 really, so I cannot attack this pawn or jump there. So I'm kind of unable to tell what is my next move, next idea. And even though objectively once more g4 was not the best move for white, practically if he wanted to draw and if I wanted to avoid a draw, this was somewhat interesting. In the game, what should have happened, I guess, was the knight c3 back, because knight f4 itself is not that problematic for him, and the idea would be that since I finally weakened the b5 square forever because I pushed both pawns, knight c3 trying to jump there would be okay. However, he chose a different, let's say, move order, which I believe was not that good, because my opponent played rook b1, allowing me to finally play f5 I talked about, because after takes, yes, my pieces are still under the g4, let's say, threat, but because of this placement of the rook just a second ago, I can simply take the rook. And obviously in here, the variation is not finished, because if you think about it, after gh5, I am attacked here and there, so I am just an exchange up temporarily. I need to fix both my pieces at the same time. If I will not be able to do it, I mean, I'm losing one of them and I'm also losing the game. But in here, the whole point was I have bishop e4 move. So solving one issue, not solving the other, but creating a new one, right? So knight for the knight, if this jumps back too. Now I have the material advantage and winning position. For those reasons, f5 was okay. At this moment, I attacked the rook, so white has to waste one more tempo. He played rook b5, which I found once more inaccurate, to be honest, because I knew what's coming. I played bishop d7, he chose rook b2, so trying to set up the double stack if possible. And in here, as I've said, I knew what was coming, I knew what was I planning, let's say. I just needed to calculate everything precisely, because if you think about this position statically, even though I managed to play f5, the position is still not that great for me. And this bishop has no exact outpost, let's say. The corridors that he is attacking might be somewhat useful, but at the same time, opponent might just, not put any piece there, and that's that. My knights here are unable to jump to f4. This bishop is not that great. On the other hand, opponent have the b-file control. So all in all, it's not that easy to continue, especially since the character of the position did not change. It's still closed, right? The only thing that has changed when we compare, let's say, this position to that one, after those three moves, is the fact that those pawns are gone. So how to make use of this fact? Well, I figured that since the pawn is gone and mine is not blocked, e4 has to be a strong candidate move for me, because it would open up plenty of my pieces. It would open up the diagonal for the bishop that as of now is bad. It would kick away maybe some pieces of the opponent, because the knight would be attacked, the bishop would be unable to go there. On top of that, e5 square is open, so not only do I have the bishop open, but maybe I will be able to jump to the center with my knight, and so on. So even though you may think that the most obvious way of continuing would be to play rook f8 and then knight f4, knight on f4 itself does not accomplish as much as e4 idea, so this was my main focus. And indeed, I've played it. One variation that I was scared about, and you may not believe it, was knight h2. And you may ask, why was I scared? Well, the point is that in the line that happened in the game, knight g5, hitting the pawn, you may say, yeah, you should be scared about it, right? But I had a trick. I will show it later. After knight h2, I don't have a trick that I will show you later. And the problem is, what do I do? Because after knight e5, let's say, because this is something I prepared and wanted to play, knight c3 happens, so the bishop protects the pawn, the knight is attacking one. The only way for me to protect it would be to play knight f6, and all of a sudden this e4 push, yes, it allowed me to plant the knight onto the good square, but at the same time, I don't have a clear way to take the pawn, I don't have clear jumps into the opponent's camp. This knight has to protect the pawn, so not that great either. And what's the what's the idea for me? He plays, I don't know, bishop e2. What should I play? I don't have f-pawn push. I cannot use this pawn effectively, and this knight kind of covers all the squares if I would like to get crazy and sacrifice or something. So practically speaking, it's really hard for me to continue. And for that reason, after knight h2, I would have to perhaps change my plans a little bit and not go knight to e5 but try to play bishop f6. But at the time of playing the move, or maybe actually I saw it in the end, I knew that g4 is problematic because my knight is stuck on the edge of the board, no squares to jump to, and yes, I'm hitting the rook, but after takes, and there is a very similar scenario happening, right? I got the exchange, but as of now both my pieces are attacked, and even though in that scenario I had bishop e4, in this scenario that we are now seeing, I don't have any useful bishop move. The thing that I would have to see and evaluate properly would be the fact that after bishop a3, hg, instead of trying to save the piece, let's say I got 2 pawns for it, and the biggest one, obviously the most important one, is this one. This is a supported outside passed pawn with the, promotion square of dark promotion square with the dark squared bishop around it, and it should be objectively, practically maybe too, enough for me to create enough counterplay for the material, because if you think about it, yes, I have a rook and 2 pawns for the 2 knights, but those pawns are doubled, this is a lonely one, so yeah, materially speaking, I'm not happy, but practically speaking, I would be. But I would still have to see it, right? So knight h2 therefore was my biggest problem, because yeah, bishop f6 I couldn't calculate till the end, knight e5 was not working that well, but I somewhat expected my opponent to miss the trick. So let's go back to the game. Knight g5 happened, attacking the pawn. I played knight e5 attacking his. He played knight c3 protecting his and attacking mine. So all of a sudden I have 2 knights attacking my pawn. So how am I not scared about this? Why this knight on h2 was scary for me? Why this knight on g5 is not? Well, I have a tactical trick of bishop g5, bishop g5. So I am exchanging my bad bishop for a good knight in a somewhat closed position, but it's only a strategical, let's say, addition. Tactically speaking, I have bishop takes h3, which my opponent have missed from the distance, and I don't blame him, it was not that easy, but the point is obviously that after gh I have amazing fork, I am getting the queen and winning the game, and this was something I was somewhat relying on maybe at this point or at latest at that point. So, as white, let's say, after e4, this trick on h3 is not something that you may expect that often, but from my side, since I was the one begging and praying for some counterplay, for some activity, tricks were on my mind, right? So yeah, knight g5 here, takes, and still I did not resolve all the issues. My point is that after I grabbed the pawn, obviously my pawn on e4 is lost too, but after I went back and he went back, I resolved most of my issues, because my issue was lack of the activity and space for the pieces. Now all my light pieces are even higher placed than opponents. My other issue was that my opponent could have, stopped my e-pawn from pushing, take over the e4 square, jump here and there. Like at this point I am in no danger, I am in no pressure, under no pressure really. And on top of that, since it's my move, I can try to take over initiative, to be honest, and I did just that. Thanks to the fact that the 7th rank has completely opened, I had queen f7, and all of a sudden, thanking the still somewhat closed center, I can actually launch some kingside attack, especially since there are not so many pieces, white pieces on this side of the board. My opponent went bishop f4 immediately, I played queen g6 anyway, he exchanged, maybe okay, but at this point, if he went that route, meaning that he wants to exchange the pieces, he should follow it up with further exchanges, because once he exchanged that, yes, he got rid of the knight that was, let's say, threatening with the forks or something, but he also got rid of one of his defenders while inviting my attacker. So in order to not be in big problems in here, he should try to exchange even more pieces, and then after resolving those issues, my attack would not be as tough to handle, let's say, and then white should be fine. Instead of trying to lower down the tension on the king side and try to counterplay my play, in a sense that he wanted to exchange, he started his own initiative on the queen side. However, I believe that practically speaking, it's simply too slow, too weak, and yeah, I'm taking over the king side where it matters the most because that's where the kings are, right? So he chose rook b6, followed up by knight b5, but I invited once more piece to the attack. I'm ready for it, let's go for it, right? I chose bishop e4. I am setting up all kinds of sacrifices already as of now. I can try to play bishop g2 followed up by rook g5, or bishop g2 followed by knight f4, maybe some other combination too. I don't have to rush things. I can play first rook g5, then hit that way or the other. Maybe knight f4 first, then hit there. So you get the picture. I have all the pieces aimed towards the same direction, the same goal, and opponent is struggling to find any, let's say, defensive resources. But as of now, he still continues with what he has planned anyway. He took on d6, I went away with the queen to g4. f3 obviously is not working because the pawn is pinned, therefore this one would not be protected. And already as of now, computer says that there is only one way for white to draw the game, which is not that easy, to be honest. What is it? It's rook e6. The idea would be that even though I have planned this rook g5 move trying to, just take there and crush the opponent completely, because he is hitting me both here and there, he can simply play rook takes e4. And my queen got overloaded. If I take the rook, I'm losing mine, and without the bishop, I don't have enough control, enough attack to the g2 square, so I could not play rook g5. And if I would like to change the move order and play this, and now that, f3 is incoming, which would be not possible in plenty of the other variations, because simply white would not have enough time to do this, and with the open second rank, it might be hard for me to attack furthermore. And what else do I have? I might actually try knight f4 with the idea that I am, bringing up the pressure towards the pawn, because after rook takes e5 I can take. And now, since I already took the g2 pawn, f3 makes no sense and it does not help because I can take. With the check, I took two pawns in front of the king. I can take the rook, very importantly, so materially speaking, I will be fine. Tactically speaking, computer screams there is checkmate in 11. I doubt I would find it, but still, the attack is there, right? So that's perfectly clear. However, after knight f4, funnily enough, white has one more only move that computer suggests, which is f3. So once more, once I set up everything towards g2 pawn, opponent is trying to open up the second rank, because now if I take, he takes, he did not lose this pawn, and this was the most important one, right? And in here, yes, I can still take the rook and claim that materially speaking we are equal, and still I have some counterplay, some play on the white king, but computer says one and only move here to take over the control over the third rank, not allow any checks and whatnot. So still I am attacking, still practically I might be winning, but objectively apparently I'm not. Nevertheless, I'm showing you guys that to just show you how big my attack was and how precise opponent should have been to save the game, because he was not as precise. He started not with rook e6 but rather knight c3, trying to hit my bishop and exchange it. But now I have few routes to win. Bishop g2 was something I considered strongly to immediately, as usual, take this g2 pawn and try to create some pressure. I was just unsure whether or not I would be checkmating my opponent. Apparently I am kind of doing that, so I might have gone for it, but I chose some, let's say, calmer approach of bishop f3 to just keep the bishop protected, because as I've said, the pawn is pinned, create some pressure and then try to slowly deliver the checkmate. Only now my opponent played rook e6, but it was one move too late. I played rook g5, now my bishop is okay, it is not attacked when comparison to the other variation. In here, he chose knight e4, trying to hit my rook, and if I would have taken the knight, once more this rook e4 happens, not as deadly as previously, because then I would be losing the game. In here, the knight has disappeared, right, in a sense, but I'm still not winning. So after knight e4, I don't want to take, I am attacked, so I need to figure out what to do. And a funny variation would be to sacrifice the queen and then try to deliver the checkmate on the first rank, and apparently it's working. The only way of trying to escape the checkmate would be to play knight g3 to protect the square, and after that I can take, and if takes I can take, and if takes, I can take with the discovery attack and taking the rook. But as you can tell, quite a lot of the calculations. Therefore, at this point, I decided that I want to play knight f4, furthermore creating more pressure on the g2 square. And after my rook is taken, I can play bishop g2, basically saying, please take me, I will checkmate you. But my opponent found, let's say, desperate way of surviving, at least for now, which was queen takes f4. If I take with the queen, apparently this position is not that easy to win. And to be honest, it's not even winning because opponent have rook, bishop and the passed pawn for the queen, so it's not enough. I had to do better. I played better move, which is rook takes f4. The drawback to it was that even though I'm still maintaining some pressure there, and the point is that thanks to the queen being still here, bishop g2 is not good because I will not be taking the knight but rather the rook, and I'm winning, right? He has rook e8 check, nearly checkmating me, but obviously I can draw the rook back, so I did just that. And after takes check, I have to make a move with the king, and I could have gone to e7 to be honest, but it was just one move after time control. I was expecting a resignation from my opponent to be honest, and I didn't want to go there to allow him some crazy move like this, and maybe even... I mean, there is nothing really here, but instead of sitting and calculating, I felt like anything is winning, right? So I just went to g8 to not allow any checks, any forks or whatever. But apparently, after takes, which had to happen because of the checkmate, takes king h2, it's not as easy as I thought that it would be to win the game, because this is a passer that is dangerously close to promotion. My king would be 100 times better in here, just stopping the pawn. Since it's far away, it might be practically challenging, and on top of that, my opponent acknowledged very well that after queen e2 that I initially thought kills the game on the spot, because what I've calculated was d6, queen e6, and oh my god, my queen. But in here I knew that after takes, king f7, I will control those two pawns, and those two pawns will be not controlled by one and only king. So I wanted to finish the game in style in the pawn endgame to show it to my students, and this is a risky type of thinking when you want to play in a way to show the students not to play in a way to win the game in the shortest way possible. But this is something I've calculated. And if not, I also had this check to take the pawn. But what I forgot about, or should I rather say did not include in my calculations, was the knight c5 move. Queen takes c4, knight b7, very good, very important one, because as of now the diagonal is blocked, so the knight is under no control, it's not protected, but at the same time I don't have any way of trying to exploit it, because after the check with the double attack, there is d6, closing down the diagonal and opening up the other. So I cannot do it apparently. And if so, bishop will protect the knight shortly, knight will protect the pawn shortly, it also protects the promotion square. So once opponent will take control over the d7, all of a sudden the pawn is, marching forward towards the promotion. So it's not that easy for me to play this position. Even though this was the scenario I kind of expected, as I've said, I underestimated it. So in here I had to figure out the way how to win it, and I felt like the practically best solution to it all will be to try getting some counterplay of my own. What I mean is, yes, queen is powerful, but it might not be enough to deal with all of this cooperation with the promotion idea in mind. So I wanted to take the pawn to free up mine and then create another threat, if that makes sense. So I started with queen a4 check, king went back, I check, he went back, I took here, he pushed. So he got what he wanted, let's say, but I got what I wanted too. I played queen a4. For me it was very, very important move, and even though computer maybe disagrees because it sees a win everywhere, for me it was really, really challenging to find a win in here, especially because now I'm covering the square while maintaining the control of over the pawn, right? If my opponent would have played bishop h3 with d7 idea, with d8 idea, I found one and only way to win, which you don't expect while being queen up. What's the idea? Or rather, I should start with what's the problem. The problem is that I might be unable to take the knight, because even though with this move it became not protected, it's very hard for me to deliver any kind of double attack to the knight and to the king, because the king will be operating on the dark squares, knight is on the light square, so how am I going to connect them? And if so, if the knight will survive, then the pawn will survive, and if I will stop checking at any moment, pawn will push once, then will push once, and so on. So I really need to react now, and I have to find one and only solution to the problem. And the solution was queen f4 check. If the king goes to this diagonal, then I give a check and, you know, take the knight, so it makes no sense. King g1, therefore. I now give a check on g5, with the idea that if the king goes there, nothing changes basically. If the king goes there, I can then, I will show you. Check and then play queen c6, once more taking the knight. So he has to go back once more. Instead of going back to f4, I'm going to e5, because this is a very important change. Since after king g1, which will obviously happen now, I have one more additional check, which is queen e1, hitting the king and the pawn. And now after king g2, once more I have queen e4. And after king h2, I will be now collecting the pawn. And not only it's about the pawn, but rather the fact that opponent is still, or rather will be now, unable to cover all the checks with the double attack to the knight. So bishop f1 is the only way to go, but once the bishop moved backwards, it does not support the pawn. So I would play queen d1, important move, so that the bishop is pinned, the knight is not protected, the pawn is unable to move, but still white has to make a move, right? So basically there will be no other option than to take my pawn, and after this I finally resolved the issue of the passer, and with the queen I would be easily winning on the king side, right? But as you can tell, not that easy variation. I would have to spot all the patterns with the check, so that I would have to give the check on f4, g5, e5, this triangle type of stuff, queen e1, d1, 5 precise moves, only one with the queens. I mean, yeah, how I got into this scenario? I mean, I know how, right? At this point I should have simply played king e7 and forget about it, but king g8 was a terrible practical decision. Anyway, we are here, and as I've said, bishop h3 would be a real challenge, real test for me, but my opponent played king g1. I'm not really sure why exactly did that happen. Yeah, I really cannot tell you what was it for, because as of now I give a check, and after he covers it, we basically got ourselves to the position I wanted to get anyway, but without those old tricks. I just, you know, got handed this position with one more tempo, which allowed me to push the pawn, which will then go towards the promotion. And after knight c5, a3, my opponent have resigned. So this is it, guys. Unexpected problems at the very end of the position. Thankfully, at no point I was in danger to not win the game, but to be honest, at this one moment I had to take off my sweatshirt, right, because I was kind of hot, because I realized the problems that are coming at me and I got stressed out. But yeah, everything worked out in the end. So opening wise, I deliberately went for the worst position, but this was the scenario I wanted. So yeah, a win in the books to start off the tournament with full point. Always a nice feeling. And since the game was interesting and long, therefore the analysis was a long one too, I will not make it any longer then. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to leave a like, and we'll see each other tomorrow for the analysis of the next round of the Prague Open. As for this one, that's all. Thank you all for watching. Bye bye.